Hi everyone, my name is Keely and I'm the owner and creator here at Soy and Shea, and thank you so much for joining me for another soap making video. Oatmeal milk and honey is one of those real classic smells that you see a lot of soap makers work with, but I have mentioned in earlier videos that my customers haven't been too fussed on it when I've offered it in candles, melts and bath milk. But I've had this 3/4 bottle of the fragrance oil sitting on my shelf and I decided it was about time I used it and made a soap. So today I'm going to take you along as I make oatmeal milk and honey, and I'll be using real oat milk plus oats in this one, and I'm also going to try a new way of doing that in the pot mica swirl that I like to do. Let's go and see how it turns out. In my big bucket here I have my usual selection of oils, and you'll find my recipe down in the description box below. For my water part of this soap, I have taken in this jug my sodium hydroxide and mixed it with equal part of distilled water, and then in my jug over here I have some oat milk to go in it. I am also in the base of this going to be adding in some oatmeal, which I have just ground up in my Ninja. It's like a fine to a medium powder. Now I'm not using colloidal oatmeal in this one because I just think that's going to be too fine and won't really give any exfoliating benefits. Now with oatmeal, a lot of people will tell you that if you grind it up you can make your own colloidal oatmeal. The difference between actually grinding up your own oatmeal and buying in colloidal oatmeal is that the stuff that you buy, which is super expensive, is actually very finely processed into a really fine powder, and the main difference with that is as soon as that powder touches water it dissolves almost instantly, whereas when you grind up your own oats, even though a lot of people will tell you that is still colloidal oatmeal, the ground oats are a lot harder to actually dissolve in water. So if you're trying to make a bath milk, you really do need to splash out and get some colloidal oatmeal, but if you're just wanting it as an exfoliant, grinding up your own oats is perfectly fine. So the first thing I am going to do here is pour in my oat milk. Then I am going to pour in my lye solution. I'm going to stick blend it and bring it to emulsion or light trace. Okay, so I'm going to pour off a portion of this to add just a little bit of colour. One thing I did forget to mention is when you are looking to add milks into your soap, especially the plant-based milks, make sure that you're actually getting in a unsweetened variety. If you've got a sweetened one, the sugars in it will make it accelerate and will overheat as well. So you don't want any of your soaps doing that whole volcano thing because they've got a little bit too warm. Now what I really want with this soap is to have my base to be the natural colour of this soap, because that is for me a very oatmeal-y sort of colour. What I'm going to do is pour in my oatmeal into that one. Into my other bucket here I have my titanium dioxide, so I'm going to add a bit of that into there. I am going to give that a little bit of a mix, and then I'm going to put in my fragrance oil and hand stir, and then I'm going to try something a little bit different. This is smelling absolutely amazing. It really saddens me that when I've tried this fragrance in the past with my customers, they just really haven't taken to it. But I've had this bottle sitting on my shelf and I don't have much luck in those buy sell swap pages, so I've got to use it, otherwise it's just going to get thrown out, which is a complete waste of money really. So when I actually measured out my oatmeal milk and honey, I didn't have quite enough, so I've actually blended it with some honey wash. Both of the fragrances are from Aroma because my customers really do like that honey wash, and the two of them are very similar except for the oatmeal milk and honey is probably a little bit more in your face, so a little bit sweeter. So I think by combining the two I may end up with just that perfect fragrance for my customers. That is looking like porridge in that container there. It's looking really good. Now when I say I was going to do something a little bit different, I have done this technique before. I am going to do an in the pot mica swirl, and then I'm going to do a drop swirl in here. The reason it's a little bit different is because whenever I've done this technique before, I've always poured my mica into a black coloured soap base and then into another dark colour, and that really makes the mica pop. But what I want to try and make this one look like is that there is honey drizzled through the soap. So I'm hoping that we still will get to see some of the mica against this light colour. So I have just done my in the pot swirl in that one. I'm just actually going to give that a bit of a stir to make sure that the gold has gone all the way through, and I'm using Resplendent because it does have that real honey look to it. Alright, so I'm going to get my mould because this is starting to thicken up on me. I'm going to start by pouring some of my base colour in, and now I am going to do a drop swirl of this white colour, and it is quite thick, so we'll end up with some quite thick swirls. I'll probably maybe put the coat hanger through it as well. We'll see what happens. We'll just put it through just for a couple of turns just to try and get a little bit of movement in there. But I also like when you pour, do a drop pour where one of your soaps is a lot thicker than the other, because you end up with some really nice patterns. So get that cleaned off. I'm going to finish scraping out those buckets, and then we'll come back and do the top. Have done here is I have taken a stainless steel teaspoon and I have just moved it around on the top of the soap just to give it a little bit of movement, and it also helps to push the soap around so you end up with nice even bars. So that is looking pretty good. And also by having all of these little divots on here, let's get rid of that spoon, I can now put on some whole pieces of oatmeal just to decorate the top a little bit. So I'm just going to take a few pieces and I'm just going to scatter them across the top here. And as a final touch to the top of this one, I have some clear melt and pour, which I've melted down and put a little bit of that Resplendent mica through, which is the same one that we did the mica drop swirl with. And all I'm going to do is just drizzle some of this over the top to make it look like there's honey sitting on the top of this one. Okay, so this is all I'm actually going to do with oatmeal milk and honey. For me, it is such a classic and simple fragrance that I think it needs a very simple and very classic sort of design as well. What I am going to do with this soap is give it a spray with some rubbing alcohol, and then for the next couple of hours, every half hour, I'm going to come back and give it another spritz just to try and combat any soda ash. I'm going to leave it sit here overnight and come back in about 18 to 24 hours and cut it open, and we'll see if that mica does stand out against those paler colours. I am back to cut open oatmeal milk and honey, and I am really excited to cut this one open. When I finished pouring this, all the leftover batter that I had in my jug I poured into my guest size mould, and I don't actually cut those soaps. But when I unmoulded them, I am pretty sure that what I am hoping to have achieved inside this soap has actually worked. So I'm pretty excited to get this one cut. What I'm going to do is turn this one on its side so all those oats are facing me, and that just means that as the cutter comes down, it doesn't pull those oats down through the bar. Now sometimes you'll see people who'll put those pretty tops on this side of the bar, but as you cut it, it still drags it through for me. So I find where I can, on these types of soap, I like to turn my soap so that those sort of edges are pointing towards me. So we are going to get this one cut and see if doing that mica drop swirl against a light coloured batter actually works. And while I go through it, I don't know if you guys have actually noticed, but I started to do some sort of tagging on some of my equipment. I invested in a wood burner, and I have actually marked both of my soap cutters. So you can see this one, I've got Soy and Shea written across the back there, and I've also got it on my other cutter as well. Alright, so I've just removed the end, and let's take a look inside. And that is oatmeal, milk and honey. There's a bit of a shadow on there, but I can see that that gold has actually gone through and done exactly what I wanted it to. I have got a shadow, but I can't seem to get rid of it, and there is also a gel ring in there, so I'm having trouble deciding between a shadow and a gel ring on the soap. But I am so pleased that that in the pot mica swirl actually does show up against those pale backgrounds. That just looks like a really nice bowl of porridge with some milk or some thick cream sitting on the top and honey drizzled. Really, really nice. Let's grab this next piece and have a look in there. And the swirl is just so delicate as well. The soap has turned out to be everything that I actually wanted it to be. I am loving the smell of it. Mixing that oatmeal, milk and honey with a little bit of that honey wash has really toned down the sweetness that oatmeal, milk and honey actually has, and it's just put a touch of fruitiness into it as well. And all those bits of oat that are in there, that's going to make for a really nice exfoliating bar. Really love the swirl on that one, and you can definitely see that gold mica that's dropped through. So if you do want to have a go at doing that mica drop swirl, I've done it a few times now where I actually do it as an in the pot mica drop swirl. Sometimes you see people make the mica up and they drop it straight into their mold, but I've always found doing it that way I end up in a complete and utter mess. But doing it this way, I end up with beautiful swirls with that mica, and the oil of that mica easily absorbs into the soap as part of the Superfat. So I am really happy that I have given this oatmeal, milk and honey a go. I do hope that my customers really like this blend. It's heading off to the curing rack for the next 4 weeks, and then I'll load it up onto the website and be taking some of it to markets as well. I hope you've enjoyed watching how I make my oatmeal, milk and honey. If you did, why not leave me a thumbs up and any comments down below. If you've got any questions, I will get back to you as soon as I possibly can. And until the next time, I hope you have a great week, and I'll see you then. Bye.